We begin by acknowledging with humility that the land where we are today in this territory is the territory of the people of the Salish Sea. Their presence is imbued in the waterways, the shorelines, the valleys, and the mountains of the traditional homelands of the Coast Salish people since time immemorial. And I just want to say, for those who live here, if you are new, please walk these lands and remember or learn about where you are. Those who are already here, we live here every day, and people tell us we should walk with authority, but I think when we talk about humility, let's walk with humility, knowing that the indigenous people who have lived here and have given so much to us and that we've taken so much. Walk with humility, knowing that they are connected and find ways for us to be connected to them. So I thank you for this and I honor today.
Thank you, Cynthia. And before you go, Cynthia, and I want you all to think about and reflect on what's one thing from yesterday that's still resonating with you? A thought, a question, an insight. And I'm going to invite a couple of folks in, if we've got mic runners available, because we want to speak into the mic, we want to capture the recording. And so we'll just invite a couple of people to share a reflection on something that still resonates for you, with you, from yesterday. And so Cynthia, I want to invite you, and I guess I'll be your mic.
What resonates with me, lots of things, but I don't know if Van and Kuno is here today, but be bold and be kind. Those things, even though we are doing this work and it's very challenging, we have to be bold to move it forward, and so that sticks with me.
Perfect. All right. Anyone else? What's one thing that's still kind of ruminating for you?
One thing that resonated with me was the gift giving of the blankets to the family that blessed us in the morning, and that chant of, in the beginning, I don't remember it all, but referencing the motherland, and that we all come from our mothers and their mothers, and just that generational acknowledgement.
I agree. I had chills. That was very powerful. Anyone else? Something that resonated from you? Nope, in the back. And you've got another thing. Okay.
I really enjoyed the paddling of the boat through the room. That was elegant.
Michael, tune cap, weaving his way through, and it was a powerful imagery, right? You know? And here we go, Cynthia, and you'll be next.
This one was something that Michael shared also, is that we are cousins. We are family. We are in this together. And so from now on, I will recognize people as such.
All right, cousins. Instant connection, right? Instant familial connection. Yes.
Same with Michael. What he said yesterday was, we are not random. We are of math and science. That was so powerful.
Very powerful.
Yeah, we've been here before.
That doesn't correlate with the dominant narrative, right? You know, there's the civilized, and then there's the something other than civilized. Another one in the back, if we can get a microphone. So yeah, I appreciate that as well.
This one goes along with Michael as well, in that we don't have to choose based off of an assumption. What we need to do is build a bigger boat. That was
bigger
beautiful.
Boats. I think that's one all of us can relate to, right? You know, and we were having conversation last night, and we were debriefing the day, and we were talking about, does the question even frame the issue properly? Are we even asking the right question? Like, not who does not get on the boat, but how do we build more boats or bigger boats? Excellent. Good stuff. So there were some things ruminating there. All right? And you get the opportunity to bring all of that into today and into the exercises that we're going to perform, because the value of today is going to be built on that food for thought of what's ruminating and stirring for you, whether it was inspired yesterday, enhanced yesterday, or comes to life today. All right? So this morning we're going to have an exercise by Dr. Clarice Bailey, and it's going to be about moving into practice. For some of us may think that we're dealing with some highfalutin ideas, but how do we get into practice and into action? What does it look like? What are we focused on? All right, how do we move into practice? Second thing, and you've been hearing this announcement over and over again, we're going to have an open space where you get to choose a subject area, a topic that you want to sit with some of your colleagues and begin to drill down into, moving from the what to the how, and the ways in which, and the opportunities that we could advance and move forward on. Real opportunities. We literally want this to be generative of some things that we can take action on going forward. That's the open space. And then we're going to finish the day looking at our 2023 learning journey. So again, how are we learning collectively? How are we organizing ourselves with common ideas, common language, and a common framework to go forward? All right, so that's what today is going to be about. And now I'm going to invite our good friend Evan to go to the podium. These are the ways that we took the many different comments that you put on the open space topics and began to organize them into these discrete conversations that you're going to have with your colleagues in the region. All right, so Evan's going to review these, give us some insight and perspective. We're going to take what you say, not only about which ones you'd like to participate in, but also if there's some fine-tuning of language that you might suggest a word or two in any one of these, we're going to be receptive to that as well, because we want to get it right in regards to what you want to participate in terms of a conversation. So, Evan.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Thank you, David. So, as David was sharing, first, thank you, everybody who shared topic ideas yesterday on the boards here about what you want to discuss. As you know, the sort of theme for this conference is about radical reimagining. And today we want to invite you into those tougher, deeper conversations about how systems are and aren't showing up for our folks, and what we can do collectively to leverage our resources as a network to start to break down systems that aren't working for us, and really holding what Van said yesterday: when systems don't work for us, we build our own. And so this afternoon, during the open space conversations, is an opportunity for us to start having those deeper conversations about how we can work across organizations and within our organizations to start to challenge the ways in which systems aren't working for our folks and for our planet, and think about ways that we can build more equitable, more belonging-based systems and structures. And so the team really reflected on what we heard yesterday, took ideas that folks shared, and came up with some suggested topics for us to break out into this afternoon during the sort of open space portion of our agenda. So just want to take some time right now just to see, is this resonating? Are these the topics folks want to talk about? Do we want to strike some? Do we want to add some? How are they feeling? So I'll just review them really quickly, and then Dave and I will take some feedback, and then the team will retool these in the afternoon and bring them back for us. Sound good? All right. So 8 suggestions we have. The first is really about food justice, sovereignty, and security. How do we create equitable food systems to ensure we're all able to meet our basic needs, our food needs? Community resilience, really thinking about climate change, climate resilience, emergency preparedness and mutual aid. How can we ensure that we're ready, even if the systems and structures aren't ready for our survival, that we're ready for our survival, we're ready for our thriving together? Next, we put a topic out there that's really about human-centered data and measurement. That really came out of the honeycomb discussion in the afternoon yesterday, hearing how do we center humans and how we collect and evaluate our progress, and how are we doing that in a way that's equitable. Another suggested topic is about housing for all. As we know, the income gap is really meaning that some of our neighbors are unhoused. And so how are systems not showing up for our neighbors, and what can we do together to ensure that shifts? Future workforce, I think I was in the group where we really heard from Rajdeep and others around is our workforce reflective of the community that we're serving? How do we ensure folks are experiencing equity and belongings in the workforce, and that we're able to ensure that there's the right mix of folks to serve our communities in culturally responsive ways? Thinking about equity and belonging in our organizations, how do we ensure we're living our values within our organizations so that when we're going out into community, we're really grounded in that way? There's also quite a bit that came up. Michael talked about this yesterday as well, around youth leadership development and how we're preparing the next generation to really step up and step in, and we're calling folks in and those younger voices to help be part of the change that we all want to see in terms of reimagining systems and structures and how they work for us. And then finally, suggestion around art and cultural expression for social change, restorative, joyful practices as we, create systems that work for us. So we're just throwing these suggestions out. Want to see what's not resonating, what is resonating, and if there's any other suggestions folks want to throw out.
All right, great. Thanks, Evan. We'll get the picture back up there, but you saw them. You'll get to see them again in a second. Was there anything in any one of them that you have a suggestion or modification in the back there? If we could get a mic back there, thank you. And anyone else, think about what would you tweak? What would you modify? You've got an idea too? Okay, we'll come to you next. In the back.
I don't think this is a modification so much as I think an additional topic that should be up there,
Yes.
especially when we're talking about, building our own systems if the systems are failing, but equitable and accessible education. To be able to build those systems, you need the foundation of education, and not just higher education, like equitable preschools, right? Starting from foundational and building up and ensuring they're accessible all the way up.
All right, I think we're doing some live editing. That's why we're off screen right now. Yeah, all right, a round of applause for that. Equitable educational systems. Next person right here, and another one over there. Yes, thank you.
So I think mine kind of connects with what she said. I'm intrigued by the future workforce topic, but I feel like there's a qualifier in there or an adjective that's needed where it's more of a peer-based workforce, where we provide opportunities for people with lived experience versus education or licensure to be able to be a provider. We have a lot of wisdom and knowledge and experience within our clients and participants that could really fill a gap in connecting and bringing in people that need supports. But we're limited by that system that says, well, they need to have a bachelor's degree, or they need to have a master's in, or licensure. And I think that's an area where we could reimagine what being a provider means.
Excellent. Yeah, we're hearing a lot about skills-based qualifications, which is trying to move away from just the old paradigm in educational standing and so forth. In the red sweater right there, we've got another idea.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I just wanted to make a little clarification on number 8, which was the art and cultural exchange for social change. And I thought it's very easy to turn to the visual arts, which I'm partial to. I guess impartial as well, now that I'm saying this. But I think that we need to ensure it's all of the arts as they come to us from different cultures and from within this. And I think also that when we look at art as a vehicle for social change, it's tempting to look at it as a movement, but it's also a deep source of healing and connection for people. And I think that that's something we need to be rooted in, because it's too easy to move forward without sitting in that. So,
Right.
Yeah.
Excellent.
So for healing and social change.
Great point. So all arts, and the fact that it's not only a catalyst for movement, but it's also a catalyst for healing as well. All right. Anyone? I love the way you all are owning these topics. These are your topics. I love the way you're chiming in on these.
Good morning. Microphone.
We wanna
Okay.
see you.
I wanted to expand, and I don't know the number of it, but in terms of data gathering, and I appreciated your words yesterday in terms of the how, in terms of getting funding or how we report for a lot of grants that we typically manage. The reality is that if there is a lot of money out there, the system should be a little bit more accessible for organizations to tap into it, to really ensure that we give care to clients more immediately. Like, we're so bound sometimes on a yearly, 2 year, 3 years to find, for an agency like ours, to find funding to not only retain and pay well, but also ensure that we give care to several placements that we do. So in that, I want to expand it not only about the data that we have to provide, of course, we suffer through that, is how do we get to funding in a way that is not jumping a lot of hoops like we do as a small nonprofit agency.
All right. Great. Right behind you. Excellent. Anyone else? Good. Way in the back. And actually, let's get this one here, and Elizabeth will get the person in the back.
Okay. I think that including environmental justice in the food justice topic is important, as there needs to be a clean, healthy environment in order to have a place for salmon to thrive, to grow crops that we all feel comfortable eating, as far as not having toxic chemicals, et cetera. So I think environmental justice is important to consider in that.
Okay. Thank you. And in the back.
Yeah, I just wanted to add possibly to the, I can't remember what number, but to the youth piece of this, like looking at it from an intergenerational perspective, and looking at aging populations as well, and then also just thinking about maybe redefining disability access and those with disabilities. I didn't see that up there, but I don't know if that's, too specific.
Well, this is the opportunity to kind of get as much up there as we possibly can. So we're going to make note of what you're saying and figure out how to expand the youth development, youth leadership component to be more intergenerational, and then see if there's either another topic or it ties into another one of our current topics around redefining disabilities. Is that what I heard? Okay, thank you. A couple over here. Go ahead, Tiffany. Hello.
Hi. Oh, it's really loud. My name's Katie Olson, and I was really excited to see the data one up there. So a little context, my background is in epidemiology, so it's one of the things that we've talked about as we're trying to reevaluate how we evaluate is the fact that the workforce that's doing the evaluation has only learned how to do it the way that it's currently being done. And so really looking at ways that we can change it, but not in so much of an innovative way, but a way that maybe fits a little bit or goes outside the box and comes back in so that it does meet those grant requirements, but it doesn't burden the people that we are gathering information from, and it tells the story that matters, not just the count. So.
Yeah, I mean, going all the way back when I was in philanthropy, there was always this word, philanthropists said they wanted to partner with their grant recipients. We need to take that to another level, is what I'm hearing you say, in terms of data and other dimensions of the grant making process. So one more. We're capturing this, and we're going to play it. Okay, 2 more. 3 more. Let's have this one right here.
I'll be fast. When we're talking about our workforce, I would love to hear us talk about sustainable funding for living wages.
Living wages. Yes. All right. All right. Over here, we have one. And last one right here.
Yeah, I'll advocate for workforce development. Well, any of our topics have elements that can be attached broadly across all topics.
Yes.
And include elements that need to be considered at every level.
Yes.
The same way my field, prevention, is embedded in all of these systems. But I will say workforce development can include youth, it can include elderly, it can include middle-aged folks, it can include change of career folks,
Right.
and it needs to include those with disabilities.
Yes.
Because, hey, I'm 47 and a fellow, which is normally a 22-year-old job, and I have disability, and workforce development includes me, as well as the 16-year-old, as well as somebody who's 80, because we all have experiences and things to contribute, and that system needs to reflect creating space for us all to bring that to the table, because frankly, these are the populations that we serve. So it can also reflect our ages, our ability status, our lived experiences, and all those things, just as much as it reflects what we look like and where we come from.
Thank you. Very important point there. And last but not least.
Okay, hi, good morning. I
morning.
wanted to revisit a comment that I had shared yesterday, because in reading one of the list, if you wouldn't mind, if you could pull it up again, Evan. I think, one, I do have pause for concern, because my comment yesterday still, one, resonates, and it's very glaring today in what's being proposed.
Okay.
And that being said was, I think perhaps I need help in understanding how are we defining radical imagining. What does that mean to us, like the working definition? And I say that because my comment one from yesterday and my feelings was that I didn't feel like it was a space of radical imagination. I felt like it was repackaging. And the suggestions that are being offered up there cause for concern because, well, one, we know language is co-opted. And right, what's outlined, I'm particularly curious without doing analysis and pulsing, okay, what we're proposing, is this in alignment with the partnered organizations that are in this room? Is this what their mission and values and purpose is? Are we then putting, right, funding and creating something to put funding in organizations' hands that are well-intended because, right, it's something that needs to happen, or it's something that we've perhaps outlined. And so I think that, yeah, if we're going to talk about challenging systems, I don't know that we've spent enough time of pausing of where we currently are, right? What that means, what needs to shift, and perhaps folks that are partnered in this room, how harm is occurring. And so, yeah, that gives me anxiety. I want to name that for myself. And I don't think that I'm alone because there were several people that, one, said thank you for my comment. So whether they're uncomfortable with one speaking their truth, I want to name that because I think it is important to name.
Okay, all right. Appreciate the spirit of your comments. I'm hearing a couple of things. One is, maybe is there a topical area alone around what do we mean by radical reimagining? Where individuals such as yourselves can literally come together and start talking about how do we shape and form that definition with your voices. So that's one thing I'm hearing, not quite. All right, so I think we are actually, there's going to be tremendous conversation, all right, in these subsets. I don't want to shut this down, all right, so I'm going to give a nod to my colleagues to see how we might want to deal with and treat.
Can y'all hear me? Jackie, thank you so much for your comments. Really appreciate that. And agreed. I mean, I think, it is up to the folks in this room to talk together, to talk honestly, to have those tough conversations about how we think about the systems that we're naming here. There's so many systems that are being named up here. So what is it that we can do together with the resources that we have to dismantle, reimagine, restructure, and create new structures that ensure that folks' basic needs are met, that ensure that systems are working for us. So I appreciate that comment. And I think I said this a little bit yesterday, and I hope that I'll reiterate it today. I think we all today has got to be about, especially this afternoon in conversation, getting into those tougher conversations, right? Getting into maybe those slightly more uncomfortable conversations about how we can work together to really restructure and reimagine this. And yeah, open to any other suggestions. The red was my effort to try to capture what I was hearing in the room. Jackie started to write some of your comments at the top about how do we radically reimagine what's here, right? But like, yeah, open to this. We'll bring a draft back this afternoon to see, if this is still resonating, and then we'll move from there. But yeah, agreed. And so it's like, let's talk together, let's do that work together today, this afternoon, and then think about how we can carry that forward within our organizations and then through collaboration afterwards. So appreciate your comments.
And I just also want to say, much like the comment that was made over there, some of this is cross-cutting, that no matter what table you're sitting at, you want to bring the idea of what do we mean by radically reimagining these. And in the literal questions that are part of your dialogue conversations in your open space groups is a question of where are we now, where do we want to go? So you will have the opportunity to take it where you want to go in terms of how radical you want to be in reimagining. This is just a starting point. And as you could imagine us as staff trying to sit and synthesize and integrate and really, vet, or tease up, if you will, what are the themes that we're hearing and what we're saying, it's a little challenging. So, all right, so two more comments, but then we're going to need to move on because moving to practice is a part of this radical reimagining process. Mateo?
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Mateo Hernandez. I'm with Communities of Color Coalition. I think one thing that was not reiterated in your retelling of Jackie's point that I think is incredibly important to name in this space is it's not just where are we going, it's also ensuring how we're getting there, we're not replicating the same harmful dynamics and systems. And that's what I think she's naming when we're repackaging, right? A lot of what's being proposed is, how do we take this system, change this one thing, right? And then it's all better. It's like that in itself is not dismantling. And I also think the point that Jackie's making that I felt was left out of yesterday is there's been no time to develop a shared vision. We don't all know where we're going. There's been no time together to dream of what is this alternative system? We heard Van say, yes, we'll build our own system, but there's no guarantee, there's nothing there of what that's going to look like, how that's going to work, how we're going to make sure our community's needs are met, right? It's all about shifting conditions. So it's what are we doing now to shift conditions to make sure those problems don't exist? In the new world, if we're reimagining something entirely different, right? We don't have to imagine these problems existing there. How do we make sure they don't exist there? How do we make sure everyone's needs are inherently met? And I think that is something that one is discouraging that no one is naming in addition to what Jackie has shared so far. I'll pause there because I know you want to move on.
Right behind. Thank you, Mateo. I really appreciate that.
Hey, I would like to know Jackie's definition of radical reimagining. I believe that there is a lot of wisdom and there is a lot of ideas and flowing happening right now, but I want to hear what Jackie has to say. What does that mean to radically reimagine? I know that I have my idea, but I can tell that there are some conversations and some perspectives here that aren't. It's hard to be authentic when the systems have continuously oppressed us for years. So getting us to that place of psychological safety where we can actually give that honest feedback is hard. So Jackie, I would love, if you are comfortable, I want to hear your definition of radical reimagining. Not so we can copy it, but so we can be inspired.
Yeah, I would invite you to share your definition of radical imagination, and I say that because I posed the question, to y'all facilitating.
All right, tell you what, I think two things. we have an opportunity in each one of these next segments to, again, bring our individual definitions, all right? Like equity, like resilience, like radically reimagining. These are a part of each and every one of these conversations. So we stand a fairly good chance of getting to specifics and clarity in each of these individual topics by the degree to which we lean into, that radical reimagination, all right? And so that's one thing. The other thing I want to say is this. We're listening to you right now, and we're hearing we need containers, or we need forums, we need a approach to having this conversation that we're going to go through today, but then what's the next way we need to have this conversation? What's the most inclusive way we need to, way where people feel good, comfortable, ready, willing, and expansive in their thought around how they want to approach these conversations, all right, so that we can speak across maybe what our philosophical differences to come to some alignment, because it's all about common space and shared space, all right? So again, let's give this opportunity a chance, but let's also recognize this has been a continually iterative and evolving and dynamic process, all right, that has invited your input and inclusion and taken it into consideration, and we're going to turn the crank another round to take this round of input into consideration in how we shape and frame the next opportunity, all right, that you'll have, because there will be a next and a next and a next, all right? So can we maybe honor the fact that we're here and now in this very moment and make the most of what this moment represents for us, given everything that's been shared? Can we do that today? Yes? Okay, I see some hands.
I think we do that by continuing with the conversation. And this is the forum. We are together discussing the conversation to make sure it happens at a later point, because there's an agenda, actually does not move us into practice, right? Part of moving us into practice is navigating the discomfort. I'm sure that everyone in this room can agree that they're not comfortable, that this is not the ideal of how we would be having this conversation, but I think that that is necessary. Like, if we're trying to move through difficult conversations, through these topics, I think it's inherently important that we all name the discomfort that's coming from us, not conflate it with harm, right, but continue the dialogue. I would really like to hear from the folks who raised their hand, because I don't want to silence them.
Okay. I hear some snaps. All right, so let's continue the conversation right here.
Hi, everyone. Xenia Junkier, she and her pronouns. I work for the North ACH. One of the things I was just going to ask is, for me to best engage in this conversation, I would love to know, the name of this convening is Radical Reimagining, and I would love to know how, are we radically reimagining the Collaborative Action Network? Are we radically reimagining the work we're doing in the North Sound region? Are we radically reimagining our relationships? I'm just wanting to orient a bit, and I appreciate your question, Jackie, about how we define radical reimagining. I'd like to understand maybe some of the bookends around what are we radically reimagining, and if there have been any conversations about what that means, so that we can at least put something out there for us to kind of chew on, digest, et cetera, so that we can then bring our own definitions too. Because what I worry if we bring our own definitions to the space is if we say, this is how I define radical reimagining, and we have 8 different ways of talking about that, then that's really powerful to talk about, but we may not get to the place where we identify what those particular areas are, because we spend a lot of time figuring out how we have consensus around radical reimagining. So if we could have a bit of a vehicle for what that means in this space, what we are radically reimagining, then perhaps we can create the conditions for the conversations about what areas, topic areas, et cetera, we are radically reimagining.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate where you went with that, acknowledging the fact that it could be very secular with a kind of multi-pronged, input. And I also want to caution us around always turning to North Sound leadership and saying, well, what did you mean? You know what I'm saying? I think there's a balance to be struck on that, but I'm going to invite Liz.
I just really quick, just as a staff member, I just wanted to know, as a group, what are we radically reimagining, right? I see it on the top of this agenda. And so I guess I'm less looking for North Sound ACH staff
Okay,
to tell
thank
me,
you,
but
thank
just
you.
like we brought everyone to this space to radically reimagine what? Is it the Collaborative Action Network? And perhaps I missed this yesterday, so I'm really just trying to figure out kind of what that looks like.
No, I
Yeah.
appreciate that as well, because I thought that often the inclination is to turn to the conveners and say, well, what did you want us to when you're actually saying, you're putting it out to the group to answer the question, correct?
I think in some ways I'm asking, like, if I was brought here to radically reimagine, then I want to know, like, what is whoever brought me here? So yeah, I think ACH partners, whoever was part of putting together the convening, and yes, I want to know what everyone in here thinks about radical reimagining. Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, all right, so
Thank you.
I'm going to continue to draw from the group's energy and perspective. Yes, ma'am.
Bree Capers, she, her pronouns. I work with Homage Senior Services. 10 is a really good number, but since I personally work with seniors, I have a group of Black elders that I meet with every Tuesday. I think about everything that I experienced yesterday, and I feel like it's almost a little bit of a disservice in everyone talking about the now and where we are, thinking about what we've been through. I feel like there should be some thought around like supporting our seniors and preserving our history, really. Thinking about like if there weren't things in place to preserve like everything that we experienced yesterday, like there's a possibility we wouldn't be continuing to learn and acknowledging our land and that kind of growth. Just thinking about, really just the preservation of our history and supporting our elders.
And I have to say, adding on to that, the last time I was here, I felt that very same thing very strongly, especially as an African American male. Because one of the things I look at the Native cultures and I feel strongly about is, man, they've got more of a grip on who they've been than I, as an African American, have a grip on who my family, my people, my ancestors have been. And so I really appreciate what you're saying there. There's a comment in the back. Right there.
I will start this off by saying that I wasn't here yesterday, so some of the conversations that happened yesterday I was not privy to. But one of the things that I am feeling right now in this room with this conversation that is happening is a lot of discomfort. And I think it's important to acknowledge when we're talking about radical reimagining and using the term radical, especially if you are someone like me who is white passing, you are going to feel uncomfortable, and that is okay. I think it is important to acknowledge and sit with that discomfort instead of trying to sweep it under the rug or avoid it. I think that is something that should be named and should be acknowledged and should be sat with.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else? And again, I think part of what we're trying to do is to surface as much of a clear line of focus on what you think and feel. Radical reimagining looks and feels like. Actually, you're naming the feeling. If it is radical, it's going to be in the context of your own discomfort. So whatever that thought is that makes you feel a little certain kind of way, all right, that's what this conversation seems to be about from my perspective. Yes?
And I'll stand so everyone can see me. So my name is Arshel Ramos. I am with Office of Tribal Affairs with the Healthcare Authority. I also am a tribal member, and I'm of Mexican descent. And so I always want to acknowledge that all of us in this room together is acknowledging the beginning forward. And I shared with my table yesterday, one of the words that I had in my work and have I had being a tribal member myself is that it's the generations before us, all that had happened, it's going to take that much work going forward. It's not going to happen today. The consistency that was talked about yesterday, we're having that conversation now. We don't know what that looks like. And so the discomfort, the anxiety, the fear, whatever it may be, that's the starting point. That's the tipping of we're going somewhere. And we don't know what it may look like, but we're in a direction that we all agree something needs to change. And let's get on that boat, let's get on that canoe together and figure that out. And, especially with Michael saying that, when we have a disaster, how can we come together? We're trying to come together because we all know something needs to change. And words are key. I agree with that. Definitions, and especially in Indian country, some words that doesn't translate from healthcare authority. So that's why I have a job, so that I can help support that government-to-government relationship. There's that understanding. There's that coordination. But there are difficult conversations. There is going to be anger. There is going to be frustration. But the thing of it is like, I think we're really, we need to kind of hone back a little bit and say, hey, we're here. We're not going to have the answer tomorrow. But if we consistently work at this and define it as we're going, it's a moving document. It's a going process. Because I also work with contracts and stuff like that, where it's a continuing, evolving, and changing document, because it will serve the tribe, the people, when it needs to at the time. And so that's where I feel like that's kind of where it's at. But I don't want to discredit anybody. I'm glad you for sharing that, because there's multiple people probably feeling that way. Thank you, Mateo. I appreciate everybody's thoughts. But that's kind of the thing of where I'm like, reel it back, because we all are here to start it and make it keep going. And that's kind of where I feel that conversation is going to happen. So that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. All right. Ara, right behind you. Oh. And then right here.
Going back to Jackie's question, what is my idea of radical reimagining? It feels, I'm just going to say it, no one's really defined or shared what they actually think it means like. So I'm going to share it because the question was posed, and I still want to hear Jackie's. I just want to say that. For me, radical reimagining, it means sitting in this discomfort and then using it as fuel. It means a behavioral health system that is decolonized, that acknowledges that we are the experts in our own lived experience, and at the same time, education and lived experience is an equitable, that's my radical reimagining, very specifically in behavioral health. I want to see myself reflected in the people who serve me. I want to be able to enter spaces and cities and feel safe, and I feel like I belong, and I'm a part of it. And for me, that is radical. The idea that someone like me can show up in a space and feel like I belong, that is radical for me to reimagine. That's where I'm at. And it's a little sad that that's where I'm at. For me, radical reimagining is to feel that I belong in my community, that I have a community that I can rely on. For me, that's it. For me, radical reimagining is hope. Hope that although we are from all different perspectives and spaces and lived experiences and backgrounds, that we can still build bridges and find room for collaboration and commonality. That for me is radical reimagining, that even across the harms that continue to be perpetuated, that historically have oppressed us, we address it, we're uncomfortable, we cry, we're sad, and then we uplift. That, for me, is radical reimagining. And yes, this is a starting off point, and I so appreciate everyone here making the time, sitting in the discomfort, and take a deep breath, and guess what? The discomfort will be over before you know it, and it just gets better with practice. So that, for me, is radical reimagining, and I hope that y'all think about it as well. Outside of your boxes, outside of your perspective, dream big. That's radical reimagining for me, because I think that hope has been missing for a second here, for a while. I think for me, radical is to hope that there's something better, that I can pave the path a little bit easier for the people who come after me, and that they don't have to experience the hardness that I have, the heartbreaking experiences that I have. That, for me, is radical reimagining. Just like I stand on the shoulders of my elders, the ones who follow after me will stand on mine, and so on and so forth. And I hope we can get back to that commonality and that humanity that we all share. And maybe that's a little, I don't know, too nice, radical. But that's where I lean towards, and that's where I need to lean towards, in order to survive and in order to keep doing the work that we're doing, even when the bridges are hard to build. That's my radical reimagining. So I hope that it I don't know, fuels.
And Ara, I want to encourage you. Yes, give her a round, give Ara, pardon me, a round of applause, because what I wanted to ask was, is there anything you see that you want to speak into what we're capturing as the topics from what you're saying? And if there's not, there's not. Because part of what we want to do, if we want to have not just this isolated conversation, but an ongoing conversation, we're eventually going to get there. We've got another segment where some of this is intended to be addressed. And so I just want you to think, how do we shape that? How do we own that? And how do we live into it in the next activities that are to come? And so anyone who else, all the way in the back.
I just wanted to say that maybe there's two different things here. Well, before even this, I wanted to talk about language, not because that's what we specialize in, and I didn't want it to come across as if that's why I'm bringing this forward, but the language that we use, the definitions that we use with our clients, with ourselves, if we don't all know what that is or how we define it, then that makes it difficult for us to simplify things. If we can simplify things, if we can explain things in a simple way to our clients, to ourselves, in the language, in the accessibility, then that's more inclusive and we're all on the same page. Two things that we're working on, I think, is exactly what was just said. That was beautiful, because one is we're looking at what best practices are from our perspective, from our standpoint of what we do daily. What are some best practices that we see that we can put on the table and say, okay, I work this way, this is what I see from here to there, that's what you see from here to from there to here. These are my best practices. Let's put them all on the table and see what those best practices are so that the next generation doesn't have to go through all those. That's one thing. What's working for us, what we know that works so that they don't have to go through that. So I appreciate you saying that. The other thing that we're also doing is what are we leaving behind? What is that legacy for those 7 generations? What is it that we are reimagining together? Okay, these are the best practices now. What is this other stuff that we can work on and leave as an institution or as an organization or as a combined entry or engagement or a way of communicating with each other so that we can move forward and leave that as a standalone, strong institution moving forward. So I think we're doing two different things here. We're coming together, putting our thoughts together. What do we do best? What has worked? And then this imagining together of improvising, what can we leave in place, new, putting all that stuff so that it works. I don't know if I said anything, but
thank you. Thank you.